Well, yeah. I'm afraid not. Shouldn't be though. You can cut it off.
Okay. Good evening.
Melanie's not here. I don't know what the program is.
No, Melanie.
That's why, until our first and second.
There she is.
Okay.
Right on time.
So we start with me describing the procedure, right?
Yes.
Okay. This public hearing is being convened in order to receive submissions from the public regarding proposed official community plan bylaw number 282-2010, amendment bylaw number 413-2016, and land use bylaw number 57-2002, amendment bylaw number 414-2016, detached secondary suites. Anyone who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaws. Any person who wishes to present a written submission to council may do so, and all written submissions must be received by council before the close of this hearing and presented to the minute taker. If a member of the public wishes to address council, they will be asked to sign the speakers list and should begin by clearly stating their name and address for the record. Comments should be related to the subject bylaw and be directed to council. Members of council may ask questions to seek clarification following your presentation on points raised. However, the main function of the council members is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council members to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review during the hearing. Your only opportunity to comment on the proposed bylaws is during this hearing, as members of council may not receive further submissions, verbal or in writing, after the close of the meeting. Council can determine when the proposed bylaw will be scheduled for consideration, and council may either adopt or defeat the bylaws or alter and then adopt the bylaws, provided that the alteration does not alter the use, increase the density, or without the owner's consent, decrease the density of any area from that originally specified in the bylaw. I'm getting better at that. I really am. Anyway, so we have, first of all, a brief overview presentation by Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hello. So thank you, Mayor and Council. So with your permission, I'll just take a brief moment to go over some of the background of these bylaws. And so I want to touch on first the policy sort of background that's brought us to this point in our time as a municipality. Some of then go through the council resolutions and timeline, the results of referrals we've had, the public feedback we've received so far, and then a brief overview of the two bylaws that are before you tonight. So just to start off with, so for a background, in 2003, the municipality formed what was called the Secondary Suites Task Force. And so at that time, in the new municipality, we didn't allow secondary suites either in buildings or detached. So that task force was 10 members of the community. They met multiple times, conducted workshops, consulted other municipalities and agencies, and in the end, they brought back final recommendations for secondary suites both in buildings and also in accessory buildings. But ultimately, in 2008, the municipality adopted a bylaw which permitted attached secondary suites, but not detached secondary suites. In 2007, a housing needs assessment was completed for the island, which identified three priorities for the island, so core needs households, renters, and young families and moderate income households. and accessory dwellings, as they were termed at the time, was identified as a potential approach for two of priorities number 2 and 3. More recently, so our 2010 official community plan, which is still in effect, set a number of objectives about being a diverse community, welcoming home to residents of varying incomes, lifestyles, and ages, wanting to provide a range of housing types and tenures on Bowen Island. And then specifically, Policy 123 outlined the future use of accessory buildings for residential purposes, along with associate appropriate regulations of land use bylaw. So then identified in our strategic plan, starting in 2015, strategic priority was Pillar D, so Priority D1 to actively support diverse households. And that strategic pillar saw having accessory use of residential buildings as one of those strategic pillars. Same within in 2016, we saw again a similar strategic pillar brought forward by council. So again, looking at the residential use of accessory buildings as a way to support diverse housing on Bowen Island. Going into the council resolutions, so in July of 2015, council discussed the idea of accessory buildings, residential use of accessory buildings, and directed staff to bring back a report on next steps. So that came back in September of 2015, and at that point we moved forward to a committee of the whole meeting to discuss it, which was held in January of 2016. And at that point, staff were directed by council to draft bylaws for discussion. So that discussion on the draft bylaws was held in May of 2016, and council directed staff to bring forward revised bylaws for first reading. In July of 2016, then council discussed the draft bylaws, so bylaws 413 and 414 that are before you tonight. Amendments were made to the draft bylaws at that meeting, including changes to the minimum size of lot, to the maximum floor area, and to development permit guidelines. And at that meeting, the bylaws were given first reading. They were referred to a public open house, the Islands Trust, and the APC. Going forward to December of 2016, then our staff brought back a report with the feedback that had been received to that date, which I'll get to just in a bit. But council at that meeting made amendments to the bylaws as well, so they included a minimum lot size regulation, and they created exemptions for the proposed development permit area. And then in February of 2017, the bylaws were given a second reading and referred to a public hearing. And then finally, of March of 2017, council again amended bylaw 414 to reduce the minimum lot size that's required. Council then gave second reading again and referred this amended bylaw to the public hearing. In terms of the referrals that were held, so the APC considered this in their August 2016 meeting, and they resolved that they recommend council consider allowing both detached and detached secondary suites on lots which are 0.4 hectares or greater. The Islands Trust responded to the referral in August of 2016 as well, that both bylaw 413 and bylaw 414 are not contrary or at variance to the Islands Trust policy statement. When we come to public feedback, so an open house was held in October of 2016. Approximately 40 people attended. 12 comment sheets were received at the open house, and they're part of the public hearing package. So to date, and this is as of Friday, so more came in over the weekend that are on table as well, but 13 letters had been submitted or had been received by the municipality about the proposed bylaws. So chief concerns raised about minimum lot size, maximum floor area regulations. Other comments received, just very brief summary, some comments that suites be restricted to certain areas of the island or to a certain amount per year. An online survey was conducted, 99 completed surveys were received. And just as a very brief overview, so in terms of the question, do you think Bowen Island would benefit from detached secondary suites? 76% of respondents said yes, 12% no, and 11% not sure. And the full breakdown of this is found in the public hearing package as well. Some of the concerns expressed in the survey about the size of detached suites, the need for minimum lot size, impact on neighbors, the need for adequate parking, again, the idea of an annual limit on detached suites. Some concern about the character of new detached suites, the size of lots permitted to build suites, protection of green space, and even the need of detached secondary suites. And then finally, when I come on, just to give an overview of what the two bylaws do. So bylaw number 413 is the bylaw to amend the official community plan. It would amend 3 of the footnotes in the OCP to include detached secondary suites, to characterize them along with secondary suites to not be included in the total unit numbers allowed on Bowen. It would update the today's housing context statement to as well include detached secondary suites. It would allow detached secondary suites as a housing typology listed in the Snug Cove Village, or along with secondary suites in policy 364, which is talking about affordable housing locations. It would include a definition of detached secondary suites, and it would create a development permit area for detached secondary suites with guidelines to be adopted with the land use bylaw. And then bylaw 414 is the bylaw that would amend the land use bylaw and take an overview of what it would do. So it would include a definition of detached secondary suites and accessory residential use in the land use bylaw. So it would include regulations for an accessory residential use, which could be a detached or an attached secondary suite. So it would say you couldn't have more than one permitted on the lot. You must provide a parking space on the lot to go with your secondary suite or your detached secondary suite. It would not permit a bed and breakfast or a commercial guest accommodation on a lot that contains an accessory residential use. It would have a minimum lot size on which a detached secondary suite may be located is 0.36 hectares. And then it would allow floor area on a sliding scale that would go up from, if you had a 0.4 hectare lot, it would allow 90 square meters going up to a maximum of 115 square meters on a 0.8 hectare lot, so about a 2 acre lot. It would amend the land use bylaw to allow this accessory residential use of the detached secondary suites in the majority of residential zones, so in the rural zones, RSR2 zones, and RCD zones. And it would make minor amendments then throughout the land use bylaw for consistency with the changes, changing some of the definitions or some of the CD zones to make sure it's all consistent. And finally, the bylaw 414 would amend the land use bylaw to include development permit guidelines. So those were created, the development permit area was created in that bylaw 413, and this would create the guidelines. So it would have regulations about the layout and design of it to focus on maintaining privacy of neighbors or minimizing the impact on views or shadowing of neighbors or existing built areas. Landscaping and screening, so guidelines about minimizing alterations to existing property or recommending landscaping between neighboring properties. It would then have exemptions for properties that would not, or for detached secondary suites that would not require a development permit, so people who just need a building permit to go forward. So those would be, interior alterations, minor exterior alteration, minor expansion or replacement of a destroyed building. Buildings more than 30 meters from a lot line, or buildings that are less than 5 meters tall and more than 10 meters from any lot line. And then additionally, buildings constructed with a building permit prior to the adoption of 414. So that would be buildings that were built and then could be converted with just a building permit. So that's my overview. Thank you.
Okay. So should I read this a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So for verbal submissions, please add your name and address to the speakers list. For written submissions, please provide a copy to the note taker. Written submissions received after the opening of the hearing up until the close of the hearing will be received by council and included in the revised public hearing agenda. Council may not receive further submissions, written or oral, after the close of the meeting. Okay, so what do we got?
We have Ronnie Day. Let's go.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. First of all, most of you know me from boating, my marina background. I am an architect, but in addition to that, I've spent most of my investment career, and I have to give you a little background on what I'm about to say, is in the apartment complex business. I've had 3 or 4 different, I still have one major one in Seattle. There are 3 things I'd like to talk to you about. The first 2 you can't handle. In other words, you don't have the control, but it's important for you to keep that in mind. In Seattle, as an example, 80% of the apartment, or 80% housing units are rental units. 20% roughly are condos. As you move into Vancouver area, that's reversed. 80% of them are condos, and the other 20 are rentals. Very few rentals. And that's got a reason. The reason is because the Landlord-Tenant Act here is so severe. Again, you can't handle this, but you have to understand how it plays into it. It's so strong that a developer or someone that builds apartments or apartment can't afford to hold it and rent it. He just wants to get rid of it. That's number one, is you have to keep the landlord-tenant. It affects everything you do. The second thing is we have a banking system up here that is substantially different in its long-term lending practices. In Seattle, you can get a home or apartment or complex, and you can get a 30-year loan. That means it isn't going to change for 30 years, your rate, your interest rate. Up here, you can get a 30-year loan too, but every 5 years, if you're a good customer, maybe only 3 if you're iffy or new, your rate can change. And so these things play into the rental market. The third thing is that you can handle, and the reason that we're in such dire shape for the units that you're proposing now is that there's no property zone for them. You tried to do that previous, and you had sub-units that they could build on their property, and all of the NIMBYs were afraid that it would just overcome the marina. So far, that hasn't happened. I think from what I've read, you have 23 units. So I don't see what you're proposing here as a big negative. I don't think it's going to overpower the island. And we really need it. We've taken storage rooms upstairs for Doc Morgan's and moved them elsewhere so that we can put living accommodations in upstairs. I mean, this is ridiculous. Luckily we have showers and toilets and it's all legal. But we'll have 4 to 6 people up there that we shouldn't have. We've got them living in their cars in the parking lot. We've had a trailer there that's moved out now. We're putting them on boats in our marina. We had to buy a boat to keep one of our chefs so we could rent it to them. There's a huge problem here. If we're trying to employ like 60 people just in Doc Morgan's and probably another 20 in the marina during the summer. We need places for them to live. We've lost some of our key people already that just couldn't find places here on the island. Thank you. Or did you have any questions?
Thank you.
Robert?
How many people do we have?
There's 3 more after Rob.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. So firstly, I'm here as a private citizen and as an architect and as somebody who can't find, I thankfully have a rental, which is unfortunately too expensive for me, but I have a roommate, but I can't find a place to live that I can afford to buy. So one of the benefits I see of approving this is that it creates some diverse housing options, and that's what I think we're in dire need of on this island. And although it may not address my immediate needs, I think it will address some people's needs. So I'm in full agreement that this will create some diverse options, and I think I saw in some of the paperwork that I was reading over the background, and I'm in complete agreement. I think it will provide excellent opportunities for people to build for family, for older parents, for younger adult children with their own growing families. So I think there's some wonderful opportunities to create these diverse housing options. I'll keep it short, point form here. I would also encourage you that if this goes well, to very soon consider this on smaller lots. I know you have this minimum of approximately the 1 acre. I think with smaller lots, scaled down sizes of units, you could really easily see them in neighborhoods closer to the cove, because I think this is going to create units further out from the cove, which are also in need, but we really do need ones walkable near the cove. So I would encourage you to consider that if this is successful moving forward. I do think, I just wanted to address, I think, some of the concerns I've seen from other people. The DP process, And the guidelines for privacy, I think, are really good, and they'll address the privacy concerns that people may have from neighboring places, because I completely understand. If I owned my own home, I would be worried about something being built next to me as well. So I think it's been well written that there's the guidelines in the DP process to address those things. And then two other things that are a bit bigger picture beyond this. One is water. I've heard that through multiple reasons. There are multiple different discussions of housing on Bowen that water is an issue. So I would like to encourage council to become, champions and take on the challenge of addressing rainwater as a possible source of water. And I know that there's a whole other layer of bureaucracy there, but I'd love to see that be something that we as a community take on and say, hey, why can't we harvest our rainwater to meet our water needs? And I think that's a big concern for any density and any additional housing that we build. It's going to keep coming up, and I'd love to see us start that process. And one last thing, because I'm pretty sure it's going to come up at some point, or it already has, is the whole Airbnb issue. And I do think that it is an issue, and I think it should be addressed, not tonight, but I would like to not see that fear of those kinds of things stop us from proceeding with something like this. That will benefit people, will provide deserts housing options. And if people are worried about Airbnb and all those things, I think there are different ways to address it. And I do think we need to as a community address those, but not through restricting our housing options and our housing policies. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oidis Nickel.
Just a quick question. Have you got addresses on everybody who's speaking?
I do. I don't have a number for one. I have a street name. So when you come
If
up,
you're happy, I'm happy. But I just wanted to make sure you were happy.
thanks for checking.
Hi, I'm Oidis Nickel. I live in the Cove on Venture Road. I'm the general manager of Union Steamship and Doc Morgan's. Ronnie's my dad. So, as he said, we have 25. I have 25 employees year round. He's a little off on his numbers. 25 year round, 60 plus or minus in the summer. As he stated, I had to buy a boat the other day to put one of our staff in the marina. We are that desperate. I've got minimum six more of my kitchen staff to hire. And I have absolutely nowhere to put these people. The island wants the services. They want to enjoy the restaurants and even the grocery store. Today, we got a call from Nancy, or I did. We're desperate for a cashier. Well, there's no one for a cashier, and this has to do with affordable housing, but it's just even availability of housing on the island to put somebody in. And it's gotten to the point where we were talking around the other day. We might, if we can't find it, we don't have enough people to do it, we might have to minimize our hours from 12 to 8 or whatever it is, because we're forced in, our hand is forced into that. And I think a lot of people agree, Doc Morgan's, we've made a big come around, and it's back to a sustainable restaurant. It's making money, it's profitable, but it's not going to be for long if I don't have the staff to do it. Even the marina, I'm looking at employees in the marina who might come on a boat and live there, because I can't say you can get a place to live on the island. And that's a sad state of affairs on an island this big that wants so many services, but if we can't support them, it's not going to work. One of the things I find, and what we do at Union Steamship and Doc Morgan's, is we hire kids from as young as possible, 13. They're scooping ice cream, and many of our employees have worked for us for 25 years. They've come up from the rank, all the way from scooping ice cream up, or we hired them at 20 and they're still working for us. But their kids can't afford to come back and live on the island. There's nowhere for them to go and rent. Maybe they don't want to live with their mom and dad. And so they need somewhere to be able to come back and live and have an opportunity to do that type of thing. Staff housing availability, as I said, it's to me it all comes down to economics and stuff like that. And if you don't, in my mind, people are just going to figure out a way to get around it if you don't figure out a way to make it legal. And it's only people are going to get more frustrated then. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Bernice
evening, Bernie.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, fellow islanders. My name is Bernie Klaus. I live on Woods Road, Grafton Bay. I have great sympathy for Bowen Island residents seeking affordable housing options, and I guess even greater sympathy for people who have large amounts of land and they want to have build a small dwelling for an immediate family member, so they don't have to leave the island or they can come back. However, in my examination of the proposed bylaws, if enacted without substantial revision and safeguards, are of much too great a scale, that will likely have very significant negative impacts on Bowen Island over the long term, not like in 1 year, 2 years, but come back in 20 years, a huge impact, with little certainty that the policy objectives will actually be realized. So I have a few larger bullets. The first one, I'm in agreement with many of other written comments you've already received. Others in communities have written eloquently of their concerns, better than I could write, concerns that I share, and for brevity I won't restate them all here, I'll just reference the authors. And I agree and support the written comments of the following individuals who are already looking on the website, the ones I've read, and those of Naris Poole, Peter Frinton, Eric Sherlock, Catherine Robinson, and Mel Hoskin. So I share a lot of those comments, so when you read those comments, also read my name to those. I also have read, and I urge Council to carefully study the April 12, 2017 Arts and Office Bulletin. Murray, you will be very familiar with the bulletin. That was a must-read in years past. The article entitled Second House Bylaw Goes to First Final Consideration. Now, I'd like to enter a copy of that bulletin into the public record if it hasn't been entered already, so you can properly consider it. Not just that you got it in the mail. I'm not currently a member of the Bowen Island Alliance who wrote the article, but I believe the views expressed find wide support on the island. Bullet 3. I do not live in Surrey, Richmond, or Vancouver for a reason. I was born there. Of all the previous written comments, perhaps the most succinct are those of Catherine Robinson in her email of December 1st last year. And she writes, I do not live in Tunstall Bay or Deep Bay for a reason. And I personally add, I do not live in Vancouver, Surrey, Richmond, or perhaps even West Vancouver where I lived a long time for a reason. Please preserve my rural forested area and do not approve these large second houses to be built in a place where myself and my neighbors have trees and space. I live in what I would have called previously a rural area. It's becoming less so, but I like to keep it there. And a lot of the people there like it that way too. The cumulative environmental impact resulting from these bylaws. Ms. Robinson's arctic thought brings to me a mind of the underlying concern in these bylaws that they will allow for the largest change and development in Bowen Island's recent history, at least spread over a number of years. Over time, the incremental and cumulative clearing will have substantial impact on our natural resources, much greater than, for example, the docks at Roger Curtis. If you look at the aerial photographs of Bowen Island over the last 30 years, and to some extent you can do it on Google, and you can see how the development has increased. And so some of the larger holdings will have another pocket of clearing. And in some cases, it won't have that much impact. In other areas, it will. I think cumulatively, it will have quite a bit. Accordingly, I ask Council to carefully consider the consistency and the inconsistency of opposing the docks at Roger Curtis, docks that I also opposed and was very concerned with on environmental grounds, of Council supporting the many positive environmental initiatives Council has supported, and a certain steady cumulative impact resulting from these bylaws over a longer time. This is especially important given the uncertainty of the policy objectives the bylaws will be met, where house pricing and rental rates are largely determined by the Vancouver market, over we really don't have any control. I don't think really anyone has control. Christie Park has tried a little bit. Bullet 5, it's entitled The User Pay Principle and Equitable Parcel Taxes. So I'm raising a few specific issues I didn't quite see in the other public comments. Maybe I missed it.
Ready?
Yeah.
Just interrupt you. How many more bullets do you have?
I have 1, 2, 3 bullets.
Okay, if I could ask you, just speed it up a bit, because
Okay.
we normally limit this to 5 minutes.
Okay.
And you're past that, so.
Sure, thank you. Otherwise, I can put my name on the list again and speak at the end if you like.
Yes, okay.
Otherwise, I plan not to speak at the end, so you'll probably hear from me anyway. Okay. So these other minor bullets are still, parcel tax is typically paid for specific services. As a reasonable approximation, properties with 2 households use twice the amount of services compared to single household families or single household properties. Furthermore, owners of 2 household properties will typically have a rental revenue stream to help them offset taxes. Accordingly, Council, if they adopt this bylaw, should adjust the parcel taxation system, I'm not sure quite exactly how you do it, to ensure that properties with added households pay their reasonable share of taxes, in keeping with the user pay for services. A specific example would be garbage. Twice the households on a parcel produce roughly twice the garbage. Neighbors shouldn't need to pay for their neighbors' secondary garbage. Undoubtedly, bullet 3, higher property values. Undoubtedly, the legal ability to construct secondary houses on properties will drive up the cost of these properties, paradoxically making less affordable people who wish to own their own detached home. Will still, on these prices, fare their money. For example, existing property owners, the proposed bylaws will result in increased property values compared to properties with no secondary houses permitted. The BC Assessment Authority in valuing properties uses the highest and best use approach that will determine higher land values on its legal ability for extra homes. Accordingly, assessed values will go up, taxes will go up. To partially mitigate against higher assessments, Council should, and I'm not sure exactly how you do it, amend the bylaws to allow property owners to voluntarily opt out of the bylaw, and thus voluntary, in quote marks, prohibit secondary suites on their property. The BC Assessment Authority will be notified. Accordingly, lower property assessments would result on those properties, and they would pay a more equitable share of taxes to their neighbor who might have 2 homes. The roost clearing would have additional benefits, environmental benefits, and social benefits, partially akin to the NAPTA. My last bullet is water supply in rural areas. I'm very concerned about this aspect, as I have no water license on the creek that runs dry in June or July and August, depending on the year. My reading of the proposed bylaw, and I might be able to deal with under the DP process, and the supporting measure, I could find little information how secondary homes will be supplied with potable water. Many rural homes are serviced by individual water licenses on creeks or by wells. Council needs to assure that secondary households have their own legal water license, or that the well's aquifer can support additional load without impacting others. It would be unwise and unfair for properties with existing water licenses meant for one dwelling to be used for a bunch of other dwellings on that same property, to the adverse and to the detriment of other licensees on the same stream.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks.
Ernie, you have anything?
Hold temperature. Do you need a copy of the bulletin?
Yes, otherwise I don't know it.
Okay.
You don't mind sharing it? There's a lot of lines tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks so much. And we have Eric Sherlock.
Thank you. I've asked Hope to hand out my submission to everybody. You have a copy. Now, please don't be upset if it looks long. One deals with bylaw 413, the other one 414, and as you know, they're very different in their application. So I was hoping you'd give me a chance to speak briefly to 413, then let other people speak and let me come back and do the next part.
Eric is our last speaker.
That's correct.
Hey, go for
My hope is that we're giving you a copy that you can follow along and that something may help you to improve these bylaws. Let me say at the outset, I accept this OCP amendment, Bylaw 413, and with reservations I recommend that you approve it. But first let me allow me to review some history relevant to the bylaw. When attached suites were legalized in 2008 under Bylaw 194, there was no accompanying OCP amendment. The OCP of the day, which had been approved in 1996, stated that the overall number of dwelling units that the OCP had anticipated and planned for was to be the same as the previous OCP, which had been approved in 1982. This principle established a density cap on future development and was a fundamental cornerstone of land use planning after Bowen Island entered the Islands Trust in 1974. The municipal planner, when attached suites were legalized, estimated that by the time the island was fully developed in accordance with the OCP, there would be about 600 attached secondary suites within approximately 3,000 homes. The bylaw to legalize secondary suites, however, totally avoided the deeper issue of how to reconcile the OCP directive for a density cap with the additional residential density that was being created by secondary suites. That task was left up to the OCP steering committee, which was chaired by Councillor Sue Ellen Fast and included the esteemed academic and planner Dr. David Whitty. That committee oversaw the update of what is now our current OCP, approved in 2011. And that updating process confronted what to that time could only be called a dishonest evasion of the density issue. The steering committee made the difficult decision to exempt secondary suites from the OCP's total residential density cap. And now, proposed bylaw 413, through an addition to a footnote in the OCP, will do the same for what will be called detached secondary suites. It is a historical turning point. The approval of attached suites in 2008 and the complement to that task was with detached suites are by far the two largest decisions, land use decisions in our island's history, fundamentally altering the future population settlement pattern. So it is natural to ask how many dwelling units have these two initiatives for attached and detached suites added to the OCP build-out. Perhaps 1,000 dwellings someday. Or maybe an honest answer is that no one knows. Some people will say that the OCP's residential density cap doesn't matter in any case. You simply can't pull up the drawbridge when the limit is reached. This long-standing argument misses the point. An accurate understanding of both the pattern and the extent of residential development is central to planning for public infrastructure and environmental preservation. Without such proactive planning, we cannot answer such questions as, what is the rate of residential growth within Snug Cove versus the rest of the island? Or, how many secondary residential dwellings does the OCP anticipate within our watersheds and water management districts? Permitting attached suites, and now their detached cousins, contributes to the housing diversity that is crucial to social sustainability. These initiatives pursue certain OCP objectives, even though the additional residential density may make it more difficult to accomplish those community goals. These are the trade-offs and often unintended consequences that accompany governing a small island, but there is one consequence, I think, that stands out. Creating such a liberal allowance for detached suites on lots that are 0.9 acres or larger works at cross purposes with the OCP objective to transfer future residential density from large lots into compound and revitalized village areas. The OCP contains numerous policies regarding what it calls density reallocation to direct future growth into Snug Cove and a future village at Seymour Bay. Much policy development and staff time will be necessary to determine, for example, how many housing units one oceanfront lot at Cape Roger Curtis is worth in Snug Cove. But in any case, the policy direction is clear and the public benefits are readily apparent. The density reallocation stimulates the creation of walkable villages, the preservation of unfragmented forests, and the reduction of greenhouse gases from less reliance on automobiles. However, the acceleration of development on rural lots, enabled by bylaws 413 and 414, runs counter to this OCP initiative. On the one hand, under the standard rezoning process, the municipality will be trying to transfer residential density from the island's hinterland into the cove, while on the other hand, it is granting new residential development rights to those same rural lot owners. Specifically, the housing infill from suites on rural lots undermines Policy 18, which commits the island to achieve a 50% reduction of on-road transportation greenhouse gas emissions from the year 2007 by the year 2020. As I said earlier, these are the trade-offs that accompany any effort to manage growth. There should be no illusions that bylaws 413 and 14 will create affordable housing, at least as defined in the OCP. But these initiatives will contribute to building the full spectrum of housing types that are needed for families and individuals at each stage in their lives. The policy decision embodied in 4113 to exempt detached suites from the OCP residential density cap makes sense. However, that change should be how that change is to be regulated is a different question, and that brings us to the need for improvements to the accompanying bylaw 414. Thank you. Now, I'm happy to let anyone else speak and then come back. I don't want to take up all the time. I'm not in charge here.
No, actually. Carry on.
Okay. Proposed bylaw 414 opens strongly by combining detached suites and attached secondary suites together under a new definition in the land use bylaw as accessory residential use. Under the regulations governing accessory residential use, there are listed a number of sensible rules. I won't read all the rules. But how council arrived at this number, 0.9 acres or larger to be eligible for detached suites, including at one time the tentative decision to have no minimum lot size at all, will be fodder for future local politicians to feed on. The municipal planner has informed council that lots with 0.9 minimum acre permitted size, there are about 780 lots that could currently be eligible for detached suites. There is no information, however, for how many lots there could be eligible for detached suites at OCP build-up. That is, when all properties in the future are developed to the level envisioned for them in the OCP. Council is going into this direction to radically alter Bowen Island's settlement pattern, quite blind to the trajectory of the development rights it is launching into the future. However, aside from that hazard, there are some curiosities when you compare the regulations in the bylaw 194, passed in 2008, which regulated secondary suites, and you compare that with the current proposed bylaw 414. Regulation 7 in the 2008 bylaw prohibits creation of a strata lot on a secondary suite and its attached principal dwelling unit. I assume this prohibition continues under the bylaw for attached suites, but there is no similar prohibition in bylaw 414 for detached suites. Perhaps I'm missing something here, but I want to draw that to your attention. Also in bylaw 194, regulation 8 states that a secondary suite shall satisfy the requirement of the BC Building Code. No similar assertion is found in 414. And this goes to the heart of a great problem. How can the requirements of the secondary suites be fulfilled unless there is a requirement for registration and inspection of the secondary suites? This dilemma has festered since 2008, when secondary suites were permitted. The only attached suites that have been registered and inspected are those that went through the formal building or renovation permit process with the municipality. The municipal planner says there are currently 27 attached suites, but in reality, there are many more than that. There are perhaps over 100. One of the consequences of this breakdown in the reporting system is that water district trustees do not have any accurate or official information on the number of dwellings that draw from their water system. Written confirmation from water district authorities that there is sufficient potable water should be obtained by the municipality before any new secondary dwellings are approved within a water district. That's the regulation on Salt Spring Island. The failure to acknowledge the many already existing attached suites raises more issues than just health, safety, and environmental concerns. Landowners of unregistered suites are free riders on municipal services that their tenants consume, because the increased public demand from the operation of a suite is not balanced by higher property taxes on the landowner. The important link between municipal registration of the suite, inspection by the Coastal Health Authority, and then notification to the BC Assessment Authority is broken when the municipality does not require and proactively enforce registration of suites. Bowen Island can learn from other municipalities in this respect, which proactively enforce the registration of suites in the public interest. Bylaw 414 affirms the same statement in the attached suites bylaw 194. The commercial guest accommodation, including bed and breakfast, is not permitted. The limitation is reasonable, but we know it is inadequate. Something stronger than a bylaw prohibition is necessary to eliminate detached suites from becoming the party house next door. Council should seek legal advice about the potential for restriction on the property title against short-term vacation rentals and against subdivision of the main and rental dwellings. Final page. One of the chief virtues of Bylaw 414 is that the requirement to obtain a development permit to construct a detached suite will mean that a landowner will need to maintain a file with the municipality. That means the detached suite will not be able to go unregistered the way attached suites have been. And the development permit requirement has that perhaps unintended benefit, because it means that there will be a file that can be referred to, proving all the steps that have been taken in getting that permit and identifying with the specific property. It's not clear to me, however, whether the municipality will be obliged to notify neighbors when the landowner applies for a detached suite. During the community consultation process for these proposed bylaws, such notification was the chief desire of the public, according to your planner's report. Accountability for the operation of a detached suite should also consider after the rental dwelling is constructed. Bowen Island should adhere to the example on Salt Spring, where one person in either the principal residence or the detached suite is authorized by the owner to manage the property, including dealing with any complaints of neighbors. This measure is less onerous than requiring owner occupation of one of the dwellings. If detached suites are permitted and attached suites continue to be unregistered, the municipality is likely to be confronted with situations where there are 3 dwellings on any given property: the main residence, a covert attached suite in the basement, and a detached suite in the backyard, all owned and operated by an absentee landlord. Finally, let me comment on the development permit regulations in the bylaw. I especially approve of such clauses as 3 and 7, quote, that existing mature trees and significant landscape features on the property shall be kept wherever possible, and quote, vegetation shall be native and drought resistant. I hope this permit is a precursor to the promised and much to be desired environmentally sensitive areas development permit area and hazardous slopes development permit area that this council in Island Plan 2017 has committed to bringing forward for community consideration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Okay, so I'm calling for a second time. Are there any further submissions? Okay, and I'm calling for a third time. And this is the final time for any further submissions regarding bylaws number 413 and 414, 2016. Okay, then we hereby close the public hearing portion of the meeting. If there are no further public input, then council now has a choice. If council does not wish to have a further staff report, then the recommendation is that all written and verbal submissions regarding bylaws 413, 2016 and 414, 2016 up to and including April 24, 2017 be received and that the public hearing be adjourned. Can I have a motion on that? So moved. Seconded. And is there any discussion before I call the question on that recommendation? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. I think we did it right this time. I really do. Okay, so the public hearing is hereby adjourned. Right?
Right.
Got it. Said the public hearing was finally got it. Yeah.
So did you write the article?
Okay, then I can give it where I can say this. My own is and so Eric had one with him, and I promised him I would get him one back to the committee.